Hi, it's Katrina. What if an entire civilization's secrets were hidden in plain sight, waiting to be rediscovered? And what if those secrets were in danger of being destroyed? Today, I'm going to take you into some of the world's most threatened archaeological sites, where history is disappearing as we speak. Are you ready? The Moai are drowning. For centuries, they have stared out to sea, and now the sea is coming for them. Chiseled from volcanic ash on a remote island, the Moai of Rapa Nui were meant to endure. Silent giants, stone-faced sentinels of ancestral memory, standing firm for over 700 years against storm, fire, time, and colonization. But the ocean doesn't care about legacy. The ocean doesn't care about anything that gets in its way. Just ask Atlantis. According to a new study in the Journal of Cultural Heritage, rising sea levels driven by climate change could send seasonal waves crashing into the heart of Easter Island by 2080. I know that seems like a long time from now, but it really isn't. That's only 55 years from now. You'll probably still be alive. And if it happens, you'll be alive to witness a tragedy. The statues are already older than the Renaissance, but the next few decades could be their last. Easter Island is 2,200 miles off the coast of Chile. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a speck of volcanic green marooned in the South Pacific. It is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. You don't wind up here by accident, unless you're shipwrecked and drift there somehow, but chances are very slim. Easter Island is home to over 1,000 stone statues erected across its surface, some of them nearly 30 feet tall and tipping the scales at 80 tons. Why erect so many statues on an island about the size of Washington, D.C.? Because each one is a monument to an ancestor, a chief, or a god. They were a huge mystery for many years, but recent research has confirmed these giant statues represent important people of Rapa Nui, mythological and historical. Archaeologists are pretty sure that the statues were monuments to ancestors, part of a culture of ancestor worship found all across Polynesia. Heck, ancestor worship was common all across the ancient world, just in different ways. It's important to honor where you came from. When Captain Cook found the island in 1774, he was struck into silence by the giant statues. Carved from hardened ash and somehow transported across miles of uneven terrain without wheels, cranes, or mechanical power, Captain Cook thought they were impossible. He couldn't come up with a solution for how the islanders moved the statues or stood them upright. Joke's on him, because it was actually pretty easy. The islanders tied ropes around them and walked the statues where they needed to go. The builders would rock the statues back and forth, and they would shuffle along down the road. No aliens or cranes necessary. Geez, Captain Cook, give the locals some credit. And now the impossible is under threat of being washed away like a bunch of logs at high tide. But scientists are on the case. Researcher Noah Paoa and his team at the University of Hawaii built a high-resolution digital copy of Easter Island's southeast coastal bay. Then they ran the simulations. They wanted to see what would happen when sea levels rose and the waves started getting violent. Because flooding on Easter Island isn't just about inches of water, it's about seasonal storm surges. Sea level alone might not destroy the statues, but crashing waves smashing through narrow corridors and inundating sacred ground might. Their models show that under current climate projections, waves could reach the ceremonial heart of the island, known as Ahu Tongariki, by 2080. Ahu Tongariki is the site with 15 massive moai standing in a solemn lineup like a stone jury. If those waves hit, erosion won't be the thing to worry about. The waves will straight up knock the statues down and pull them into the sea. Ahu Tongariki isn't alone. Burial sites, ancient dwellings, ceremonial platforms, and petroglyph-covered rocks are all in the danger zone. Waves are threatening all of Easter Island. Its statues, its graves, its culture, its identity, and its tourism dollars. Without the statues, who's going to go all the way over there? Luckily, there is a team trying to save the island's life. Noah Poa said, from a scientific standpoint, the findings are not surprising. The question was never if, but when and how bad. Now that the scientists know the timeline and what will happen by 2080, they can start trying to prevent it. Data can drive solutions. Things like seawalls, redirected foot traffic, protective barriers, new conservation techniques, and community consultation can play a role in preserving these. Paoa and his team want to partner with local stewards. They know they can't preserve even one single moai without the community whose ancestors carved the statues in the first place. So, this is your warning. If it's on your bucket list, get to Easter Island now, take a selfie with a moai, and get the heck out of there before you get your sneakers wet. Venice is sinking. Venice has always looked like a hallucination, a floating dream balanced on poles and prayer. Now reality is catching up and the dream is going under. No amount of prayers can keep Venice from sinking. But some human ingenuity just might. I mean, to be fair, Venice has always been sinking. The city of masked carnivals and silent canals is sinking inch by inch back into the lagoon where it came from. For over 1,000 years, Venice defied geography, reason, and entropy as a marble republic built on mudflats, made rich by trade and made famous by its architecture. But nature has no sense of nostalgia. As levels rise, the question is no longer if Venice will drown, it's how soon will it drown? And what is Italy willing to do to stop it? Here are the numbers. In the last 100 years, Venice has dropped by nearly 10 inches, while the Adriatic has climbed by almost 12. That's a 2-foot problem, and it's accelerating. The city continues to sink at about 2 millimeters per year, while sea levels rise by about 5 millimeters. Add it up and you've got a slow-motion disaster with a very firm deadline. In 2019, the stars aligned to flood 85% of the city. Tourists waded through St. Mark's Basilica like it was a water park. Locals bailed out their businesses, and scientists pointed to the models and said, "I told you so." 2019 was a wake-up call. Venice needs to get a handle on the problem before its tourists all end up like Jack at the end of Titanic. You're telling me he couldn't fit on that raft? To keep itself afloat for now, Venice's current defense system is MOAs. It's a series of enormous underwater gates designed to seal off the lagoon from the sea during extreme tides. It was first proposed in the 1980s and finally test-launched in 2020. 5 years ago, scientists estimated that the MOAs barriers would rise 5 times a year at most to protect Venice. By 2024, they'd already been raised over 100 times. I don't have the figures for 2025, but it's safe to say that number is a lot higher right now. It's definitely higher than 5. But who really cares how many times the barriers have risen because MOAs works? Well, kind of. The problem is that every time MOAs rises, the natural flow of water into and out of the lagoon is blocked. This disrupts port traffic, which is bad considering Venice is Italy's second busiest port. It also cripples the lagoon's ability to clean itself. You can hold back the sea, but at the cost of suffocating the very environment that makes Venice possible. MOAs is effective in the way a Band-Aid is effective for a bullet wound. It might stop the bleeding, but there's still a bullet wound to deal with. The next logical solution is to simply raise the city. You know, put Venice on stilts. I wasn't kidding about the stilts. In a plot twist lifted from speculative fiction, hydraulic engineer Pietro Teatini has a new plan. He wants to inject salt water deep into the earth, into aquifers 2,000 to 3,300 feet below the lagoon. The pressure would gently elevate the sandy layers below the clay and push the land up, like a slow, careful geological bench press. Done right, it could raise Venice by nearly a foot over the next few decades, giving the city a 50-year grace period to find a real solution. The idea may sound crazy, but it isn't even new. Engineers have known for years that underground reservoirs swell when filled. Gas storage in Italy's Po Valley already causes seasonal fluctuations in land height. Pietro Teatini's plan is to add water using the same borehole techniques as oil companies, but at much lower pressure to avoid triggering cracks or earthquakes. A preliminary test site would drill a single well 3,300 feet deep at a cost of around $40 million. The full system, a dozen wells in a 6-mile circle around the city, would cost far less than the MOAs gates. And unlike fracking, there's no explosive pressure. It's a relatively safe procedure, and if it works, Venice will have 2 fail-safes. Mohs gates can be used whenever there's a sudden rise in water levels, while lifting the city an estimated 12 inches will buy Venice 2 or 3 decades of reduced flooding. That's 2 or 3 decades to find a more drastic solution, or maybe I should say more permanent. Whether that means redesigning the lagoon ecosystem, relocating key infrastructure, or inventing a sci-fi miracle, who knows? Scientists are working on it. Nobody wants to lose Venice to the sea. The only real catch with lifting the city is that once the water stops flowing, the land will sink again. So Teatini's team is now researching additives that could permanently stabilize the subsoil, essentially giving Venice a hydraulic corset to hold its posture. But I should mention that anything could go wrong. Raise the city too fast or unevenly and you get collapse. Churches and apartments start falling over and soon Venice is looking like Aleppo. As usual though, not everyone is sold on the idea of raising Venice like a wet zombie. Earth materials expert David Dobson calls himself skeptically optimistic. He warned that aquifers crushed by past extractions may not rebound the way scientists think. In other words, Venice may not rise nicely like your last loaf of banana bread. Water moves slower than gas, requiring higher pressure, and that increases risk. But Dobson also admitted that even if something does go wrong, he doesn't think it would cause major problems. Even the naysayers can't come up with a good reason to stop this plan from going forward. Some simply want Venice to sink out of pure weird spite. More than a few critics have said the city should be left to its fate. And in a way, it is being left to its own fate. Even if Venice is raised 100 feet and put on a magic floating cloud, it still might go extinct. Why? Because people in Venice aren't having children. Venice's population has collapsed. It's collapsed so much that if Venice's population was a stock, you'd be broke. It went from 175,000 people in the 1950s to under 50,000 at the end of 2020. The city these days is overrun by tourists, hollowed out by real estate speculation, and increasingly running out of actual Italians. Some have argued that saving Venice isn't worth spending billions of dollars on what has essentially become a tourist playground. But Teatini disagrees. Venice without the lagoon is not Venice. On a hill, in a lake, anywhere else, it would be a replica. The real city is here, in the marshes, the vaporettos, with the smell of sea rot and salt. Okay, I think Pietro Teatini is a little nuts for Venice, but he's not wrong. There is so much more to Venice than tourists and selfies. It's an ancient city in the heart of Italy with thousands of years of stories to tell. Is that really a place we want to let slip silently into the sea to be lost forever? Grottoes in the Crosshairs. By the time you listen to this, one brushstroke might already be gone. When night falls over Luoyang, China, the cliffs of Longmen start to glow. Here, in this remote corner of Asia, the Lushena Buddha glows gold against the dark every single night. From far away, it looks vast and impossibly perfect, but look closer, and the serenity starts to crack. Every microfracture, every water stain, every tremor of China's shifting earth threatens to erase one of the world's grandest acts of devotion. In Luoyang, thousands of stone-carved sermons were etched into caves by hands that long ago turned to dust. And now the clock is ticking to save those sermons from extinction. The beautiful, unparalleled works of ancient art are crumbling like that granola bar in the bottom of your bag. China has 4 great Buddhist grottos that span over 1,500 years of history, beginning around the 4th century. There's Longmen, Maijishan, Mogao, and Yungang. Each one is a priceless heritage site, a silent witness to the rise and fall of dynasties and the chants of vanished monks. Each one of these grottos is filled with Buddhist sculptures, painted lotus flowers, and the fingerprints of the lost Silk Road. For the Chinese, these sites are their treasured history, and their president, Xi Jinping, knows it. Since 2019, he's made it a point to visit each of these cave temples personally. Not just for a great photo op, but to hammer home a message to the Chinese people. The message is that these caves are a source of national pride and need to be preserved. In China, the government has recently taken an active interest in preserving, studying, and appreciating their archaeological sites, which of course also helps bolster a unified national identity. And that's why China is making sure its grottos don't turn into sinkholes. and they are actually doing a great job. People, take note, because although they look impressive, the caves were never built to last. Carved into cliff faces by ancient monks with chisels and questionable workplace safety rules, they are exposed to every cruelty that nature can muster. The water damage is constant. The rocks are about as stable as a table with two legs, and humans keep interfering, threatening to collapse the caves all by themselves. So how does China go about keeping these caves safe? It's all about preservation, which is a whole field of study in itself. For decades, China would patch up what broke one problem at a time, basically putting out the fires as they popped up, which isn't very efficient. That's changing fast. According to Sue Bowman of the Dunhuang Academy, the new mantra is preventive protection. So instead of performing surgery each time a cave has a heart attack, they are focusing on preventing the heart attack by using vitamins and a personal trainer. And now I'm not even sure I'm talking about ancient cave murals anymore. At the Yungang Grottoes, researchers are digitally scanning every crack, flake, and brushstroke in real time. As the site's director, Hang Khan, said, grottos change daily. So does their information. We want to seize it before it disappears. And Hang Khan's not playing around. 80% of the site has already been mapped, pixel by pixel. But while digital replicas are great for textbooks and keeping a permanent digital record so we can post about it on YouTube and TikTok, they are still just echoes of the real thing. To save the Yungang Grottoes from time itself, scientists need to get creative. Researchers at Chongqing University are experimenting with bioadhesives. Sounds like something from Resident Evil that's going to turn your goldfish into a mutant, but I promise you it's not. Bioadhesives are bacteria-engineered goop that binds cracked relics and keeps them from cracking more. These adhesives are sort of like epoxy resins, but significantly safer in the long run. You can think of bioadhesives as penicillin for statues, or if you prefer, probiotic putty. Adhesives are working to keep the statues from literally falling apart. But let's not forget the humans holding down the fort too. Conservators like Yue Yongxiang don't just work in these caves, they live in them. That's how much time they spend in China's 5 famous grottos making sure they stay together. Many of the conservators endure harsh climates, isolation from their families, and decades of boredom, all to make sure this history isn't lost. Because if these grottos fall, so does a big piece of Chinese history. As Yue put it, it's all about insistence, passion, and love. So here's the truth. Every grotto, each soot-smudged arch and lotus-filled alcove is a collapsing lung in the breathing body of cultural memory. They're being squeezed by erosion, destroyed by modern industry, and crushed under the ruthless physics of time. But they are also being defended, sometimes by data, sometimes by putty, and mostly by monks turned scientists who live there permanently. Hopefully these caves will last another 1,500 years, but just in case there's another earthquake, it couldn't hurt to visit now before another statue or cave crumbles. Aleppo under fire. Aleppo is a city that bears its history like a scarred veteran, proud, battered, and now dangerously close to vanishing. Before the Syrian civil war shattered its skyline, the ancient city of Aleppo stood as one of the most intact medieval cities on Earth. Its marketplaces and town squares bustled the same way since the 13th century, and the alleyways still bent around mosques, churches, and caravan rest stops like a living archaeological dig. But war does not care about UNESCO designations, as you know. In the past decade, centuries of architectural memory were burned, bombed, and bulldozed. The city has been as rock solid as adamantium. It's survived Mongols, Crusaders, and French urban planners with baguettes. But the 21st century may be what finally breaks it. Set on a hill overlooking the Kiak River, ancient Aleppo was surrounded by a 3-mile wall and crowned with a mighty citadel. The citadel started out in the 2nd millennium BC as a temple and stood for thousands of years. The city's heart was protected by a defensive ring of 8 hills, each with its own archaeological ghosts. At no point in time was Aleppo just a city. It was a stage where Sumerians, Amorites, Hittites, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans took turns building, ruling, and renaming. I mean, this place has gone by more names than Diddy. It's been Armi, Halab, Yamad, Beroea. Through all its identities, it remained a hub of advanced civilization. Aleppo was never the capital of any specific empire for long, but it was always the place empires wanted to have in their empire, if you get what I'm saying. Aleppo has also, as hard as it is to believe, barely been excavated. You probably excavated your backyard as a kid looking for fossils more than archaeologists have excavated Aleppo looking for secrets. The city has been around so long that the modern version is built atop the ancient one, making archaeology both a challenge and a sacrilege. Yamad and the Kingdom of Storms. By 1800 BC, Aleppo, then known as Halab, was the stormy seat of Yamad, the most powerful kingdom in the Near East. Its kings ruled over city-states like Ebla and Carchemish, and its cult of the storm god helped make the city both feared and blessed. Then the Hittites sacked it, the Mitanni seized it, then the Hittites returned. Everyone wanted Aleppo. Everyone got a little piece of it, and everyone thought they could keep it, but no one has ever kept it. Even after the late Bronze Age collapse, when imperial lights flickered out across the Near East and civilization hit the pause button, Aleppo endured. It became Aramaean, then Assyrian, then Babylonian, then Persian. When Alexander the Great swaggered in, he renamed it Beroea and installed Macedonian colonists. The city stayed Greek for centuries. Fast forward to the Islamic Golden Age, and medieval Aleppo became an architectural jewel. Picture narrow alleys, arched stone bridges, lavish mansions, and Islamic bazaars that stretched for miles. By the 16th century, the city was booming. Trade flowed from India, Persia, Anatolia, and Egypt, and it showed in the layout of the city. The caravanserais were packed, the hammams steamed with gossip and steam, obviously, and mosques and churches competed in ornamental bravado. The city grew so wealthy that new monuments were rising by the dozen. Through it all, the layout of the city maintained different cells or neighborhoods, with each ethnic and religious group in its own district, but interdependent. Aleppo was a medieval microcosm of tolerance, dysfunction, and sometimes harmony. You had people from all over with different backgrounds, practicing different religions, all living in their own little districts. Everything was hunky-dory until the modern age arrived. The destruction of Aleppo didn't begin with war. It actually began with progress. In 1954, French architect André Gouton tore modern roads through the old city like surgical scars. In the name of progress, mosques were bulldozed, hammams vanished, and huge sections of the ancient town were obliterated, all to make this guy's roads. Aware that Gouton's vision would destroy more than it modernized, a Swiss urbanist named Stefano Bianca introduced a plan in 1979 to preserve the traditional fabric of the city instead of, annihilating it. That plan, championed by architect Adli Kutsi, laid the groundwork for the city's UNESCO recognition in 1986. By the early 2000s, the Aga Khan Trust for Culture and the German Technical Cooperation Agency had invested deeply in restoration. The place was torn up in the 50s, and it took 50 years for restoration work to start fixing everything. Archaeology, preservation, and conservation move slowly, like a slug on vacation. While destruction is as fast as the speed of light, throughout the early 2000s, Aleppo looked to be reborn. It was becoming the global model of how to preserve a living city without freezing it in amber. Then, in 2011, the war came. Aleppo will never be the same. By 2015, shelling, street fighting, and underground blasts had leveled nearly 30% of the ancient city. Al Medina Souk, the largest covered market in the world, burned like the Library of Alexandria. Entire khans collapsed. The citadel was scarred. Barrel bombs didn't discriminate between medieval masonry and modern rebels as they blew apart everything in their path. Historic mosques became sniper towers. Ancient baths became shelters. Even below ground, tombs were violated by explosions and looters. Things got so bad that most people gave up hope and fled. It really looked like Aleppo's eons of history were going to be erased forever. But not everyone gave up. Local authorities, supported by the Aleppo Archaeological Society, began working with international partners to save what they could. Even as the city lay in ruins, Adli Kudsi and others like him pushed forward with restoration frameworks and community-led preservation efforts. Good news, in 2025, Aleppo has been resuscitated. In some quarters, the bazaars are opening again. Stones are being cleaned, craftsmen are returning. The work is pretty painstaking and the risks are enormous, but there is something in Aleppo's foundation that seems to reject finality. The city refuses to die. So when people ask, will the soul of Aleppo survive? Adli Kuzi says, heck yeah. If Aleppo survives this century, remaining intact more or less until 2100, it will be because people chose to value memory over fear. The city has always endured because someone, be they Babylonian, Greek, Ottoman, or Syrian, refused to let it die. Hopefully, there are enough of those people left. And let's hope for all of Syria's sake that things don't get worse, because as history has taught us, things can always get worse. Erasing a nation one museum at a time. When a tyrant burns a library, it's not because he's allergic to books. It's because he's terrified of them. It's one thing to bomb cities, flatten hospitals, and deny the laws of war. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has checked every war crime bingo box. But alongside the missile strikes and the mass graves, there's another, slower, more insidious assault taking place. It's the systematic destruction of Ukrainian culture. If cultural heritage were a species, Ukraine is on the endangered list, somewhere between white rhinos and functioning democracies. Want to erase a nation? Easy. Just follow this tried and true method. In no particular order, blow up the theaters, loot the museums, burn the books, rewrite the school curriculum to glorify your invasion, and repeat until no one remembers what used to be there. Since February 2022, 476 verified cultural heritage sites in Ukraine have been damaged or destroyed. That's a list that includes 149 religious buildings, 241 historic structures, 33 monuments, 18 libraries, and a partridge in a pear tree. Ukraine's Ministry of Culture says the real number is over 2,100. 2,100 historical sites hit, some of them thousands of years old. Surely all the result of accidental missile strikes, right? Or could it be that someone is trying out a cultural purge with missiles? The U.S. House of Representatives, the Council of Europe, and UNESCO all agree that Russia's assault on Ukrainian culture fits the textbook definition of cultural genocide. You know things are bad when you have to ask UNESCO to help protect your street layout. Ukraine's Ministry of Culture is trying to shield entire city blocks in Kiev from being erased by Russian missiles rewriting maps. Even school textbooks are under siege. Ukrainian history books have changed to Russian ones to make sure the new generation doesn't remember the old stuff. Let's talk about Mariupol's drama theater, a site so clearly civilian it had children written in Russian in giant white letters on both sides of the building, just in case any passing bombers had a moral compass. Russia bombed it anyway, while hundreds of civilians were sheltering inside. Estimates say between 300 and 600 people died. If that sounds like a war crime, that's because it is. The building stood alone in a park, surrounded by open space. The only thing it threatened was Moscow's ability to claim plausible deniability. So there went hundreds of lives along with the drama theater. Two birds with one rocket for Russia. But it's not just destruction. There is also organized theft of archaeological artifacts that would make even Blackbeard embarrassed. In Kherson, over 33,000 artifacts were looted when Russian forces retreated. And these weren't your average souvenir spoon collections. In Kherson, Russians stole priceless paintings, manuscripts, and a variety of archaeological finds. The logistics were run by Russian military officers and hand-picked museum curators from Crimea. The Russians brought their own art thieves. Meanwhile, stolen pieces from the Kherson Art Museum are now showing up in Russian museums. Russia thinks they're Britain in the Victorian era, and Ukraine is Egypt. They are stealing artifacts and putting them in their own museums, claiming stealers keepers. It's not all over, though. Ukraine, with help from its European allies, has been conducting what can only be described as a heist in reverse. They've been evacuating masterpieces from war zones into European museums. 60 works of art from the Odessa Museum of Western and Eastern Art are now on display in Berlin. Not because Germany suddenly felt generous, but because the cathedral next door took a Russian missile to the face. According to director Ihor Poronik, the paintings had two choices. They could either sit in the dark and hope for the best, Or go to Berlin and introduce the world to Ukrainian culture. One imagines the paintings voted unanimously for a change of scenery. By late 2024, nearly 100 libraries had been damaged or destroyed. Millions of books have been burned or removed, and there is no way of getting them back. So what is Russia hoping to accomplish by destroying books, libraries, cultural centers, and museums? Everyone is talking about how Putin wants to rebuild the old Russian Empire. But what few realize is that Russia might simply want Ukraine to stop existing. It would be purely Russian. Already, Russia has destroyed the National Writers' Union, where Ukrainian independence was first declared. They have bombed historic churches and renamed their priests, and they have installed puppet museum directors to sabotage Ukrainian history from the inside. If this feels like something out of Orwell, that's because it is. It's literally part of 1984, but in this case, Big Brother flies a Sukhoi jet. Europe's response to the attack on Ukrainian culture has been quick and full of paperwork. The Council of Europe is urging members to ratify every cultural protection treaty on the table, from the Faro Convention to the Nicosia Convention. There are partnerships forming, artifacts being tracked, and crates being packed like it's the Louvre during World War II. Even still, it's not enough. Restoring a statue is one thing. Restoring a cultural psyche that's been bulldozed, gaslit, and looted takes generations. As Ukrainian Minister Mykola Tochititsky put it, destroying Ukrainian culture means destroying the Ukrainian nation. And Russia seems to understand that far better than most. It's not looking good for artifacts. Thanks for watching. If you could visit one place right now before it's gone, where would you go? Let me know in the comments, and let me know of other places that are disappearing. Remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you soon. Bye!